This is the week ahead. My name is Ibrahim Sani. This show unpacks about the kind of things that will take place over the next 7 days. And of course, it's quite interesting to note we are entering our first week of December for this year. Where has the entire year been? It's been a fantastic run for many of us, but for the rest of us, not quite. We've recorded over 30,000 deaths when it comes to COVID, but of course, it needs to be mentioned, 40,000 deaths when it comes to cigarette-related illnesses and disease, close to 50,000 deaths following motor vehicle accidents, and of course much more than that when it comes to heart attacks. People are still not well. And because of this, there's a lot of ways for us to look at how, over the next 7 days, a lot of conversations are going to take place when it comes to the health issue. I wouldn't say crisis, but the health issue. Of course, before we start on all our stories right now, anywhere from the new COVID variant, mental health, high food prices, as well as the sunsetting of our 3G services, we need to also take a look into the statement that was coming in late last week, which talks about the weekly testing in schools, particularly primary schools, on at least 10% of the school's population. This will be implemented as part of the National COVID-19 Testing Strategy, or NTS, that kicks off this Monday, tomorrow actually, when the Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin announced on Friday, a few days ago. YBKJ said that these tests would be done on a rotation basis as a precautionary measure to avoid new infection clusters from emerging. YBKJ says that students, as they are below the qualifying age to receive the vaccines, will need to undergo weekly testing with at least a 10% sample size rate of the schools of the students within the school. And of course, Khairi Jamaluddin did say that they will have to be tested in turns with a different sample of students every week, and this is regardless if they are asymptomatic or not. And this is of course quite clear in terms of how we need to manage the COVID-19 endemicity in the country. It's not just about people with symptoms, and it's not just about trying to treat people who are positive, tested positive. It's about trying to see if there are any outbreaks, particularly amongst the community. So this brings in nicely with our first story of the day, which is of course, late last week, we saw a new COVID-19 variant that was recently been detected in South Africa. Concerns have been raised by experts warning how the variant could be more transmissible and is able to bypass some of the protection provided for by the vaccines. We need to understand a little bit better on how this impacts all of us. This is a sound clip that perhaps you could learn more.
Early signs suggest that variant B11529 has rapidly increased in Gauteng, the country's most populous province. It has already spread to at least 8 other provinces in the country and as far away as Hong Kong and Israel in travellers from South Africa. Professor Tulio de Oliveira, the director of the Centre for Epidemic Response and Innovation in South Africa, warned of the variant unusual constellation of mutations. He said that the variant has 50 mutations overall, including more than 30 in its spike protein, about double the number associated with the Delta variant. Meanwhile, European countries such as the United Kingdom, Germany and Italy, as well as Asian countries such as Singapore, India and Japan, had taken preventive measures to restrict the entry of travellers from certain African countries.
All this has brought forward the whole notion of the COVID-19 causing an increase in mental health issues, not just among the communities, but predominantly among Malaysians due to traditional gender roles of men. Many of them experienced immense societal pressures to become breadwinners, and they, as a role of the head of the household, do that with an increased risk of suicide and other ailments that is included in mental illness. So we want to talk more about this. In conjunction with Men Health Awareness Month, Malaysian Red Crescent Society's Hakim Hamzah discusses some of the challenges faced by men when it comes to navigating through the trickeries of mental health. This is our conversation with the Red Crescent Society of Malaysia.
Due to the movement control order, many have been unable to go out to work or conduct their business. This has somehow affected their household income. And due to the traditional pressures of men being the breadwinner in the family, so there has been some considerable pressures on families that have their household income affected due to the pandemic. It's been reported that 80% of the workforce in Malaysia are men, and definitely the unemployment rate has risen. If you compare between the figures in January this year, which was 4.9% against 3.2% January last year. And due to financial hardship, unemployment, and lower social economic status, risk factors have developed mental health conditions among men especially.
According to Hakim, stereotypes surrounding how men are expected to behave are damaging.
Men being seen as the not just the breadwinner in the family, but seen as being strong and having the upper hand in terms of emotional standing and so on, and the misconception of the fact that men would not be affected in terms of mental health issues due to pressures and so on. So this is totally untrue. Although we have been men are often asked to man up and men shouldn't cry and so on and so forth. But still, the mental health of men are affected by certain pressures and certain stress factors.
Hakim also stressed the need for proper channels to be established in order to help those with mental health issues. He encouraged more people to speak up against the stigma surrounding mental health issues and to seek help when needed.
We need to have the channels for them to share their feelings and share their thoughts and find ways to address the issues. We also need to educate people that it's okay to talk about these matters. It doesn't mean that when you seek help, you are weak. Doesn't mean that when you have mental issues, you are crazy or you are mad. So these are connotations that have been lingering around our society that link people who seek help to them being either crazy or mad. So we need to move away from these thoughts and move away from these negative connotations, and encourage people to really speak up and share whatever challenges they may have, so that these issues can be addressed accordingly by those who are qualified in this area.
So if you are affected with mental health, doesn't matter if you're a man or not, just try to see or seek help through the best capabilities that you can. There's a lot of outlets out there that you can use. You saw the numbers that we put up just now. Remember, these things need to be discussed, need to be thought of. If you are investing in all the other areas of your life, from taking care of your car to your house to everything else, you should invest in taking care of your emotions and, of course, your mental stability as well. This is a key factor for us to undergo, and I really do hope that we can help each other better. This show, as well as my other show, Notepad, we discuss a lot more about how the implications of the current environment affect us psychologically and emotionally, and of course being empathetic to one another is actually quite crucial. So please reach out and find the help that you need. We'll go for one short break before we continue on with the week ahead. Welcome back to the week ahead, the show that shall explore the kind of activities and items that will take place over the next 7 days. We are broadcasting from the All Asia Broadcasting Centre here in Bukit Jalil, Kuala Lumpur. And of course, we are entering the first week of December. Singapore and Malaysia will next week launch a quarantine-free travel lane at their land border crossing. And of course, we all know, being a native Johorian as well, with my house just a few kilometers from the causeway, this land border crossing is indeed one of the world's busiest. And of course, for people vaccinated against COVID-19, there shouldn't be any issues from this. And of course, there could still be some outbreaks that could take place, not just at the area per se, but because when you cross border via land, you travel everywhere, both in Malaysia as well as in Singapore. So the plan, effective tomorrow on November 29th, is expected to expand an already announced move to start a travel lane between the flights of Changi Airport and KLIA, also starting tomorrow onwards. And the land travel lane will be in the first phase, will apply to citizens, PR or permanent residents, and long-term pass holders of the country that they are entering. And of course, this will allow people to visit families and work on either side of the border. What is important is that this lane will be progressively expanded over time. So if you do have some plans to go through this land border crossing, do take the consideration that while initially it might be tight, this will be progressively expanded as the authorities find out or figure out more, as they go along with this. And of course, Malaysia has announced the creation of the land border travel lane separately last week. And of course, Singapore, with a population of over 5 million, do rely heavily on us living on the southern state of Johor for things like businesses, restaurants, semiconductor manufacturing. Malaysia requires some tourism as well as some economic activity coming in from Singapore. So a lot needs to be done. Not just on top of this, we still need to reconnect with our closest neighbors down south in Singapore. So I really hope that you guys appreciate the notion of how the authorities between these two countries have come together and made this possible. We also have to appreciate the kind of sensitivities as well as the SOP requirements from both countries. But this is inevitable. This is how you live with COVID. Moving on to our next story, we need to talk a little bit more about how high food prices have affected Malaysians. This is because Malaysians have seen several items in the market, like vegetables, like bread, gardenia in particular, and other food items have increased in prices recently. Some of them significantly. Over the weekend, I have been shopping and I did see about 10 to 30% increase in individual items of price increase. The same things that I buy in my shopping cart in recent months have risen in price up 20%. That's my own personal experience. Tweet to me at Ibrahim Saninet to see if your experiences is similar or dissimilar to my own experience. Try to get that conversation going on. I'm more than happy to have a constant conversation with you on Twitter on this, because we really need to keep an eye out on how inflation is impacting each and every one of us in our daily lives. So because of this, the trend of rising food prices continue to worry many of us. It also continues to worry retailers as well, because some price hike went up as high as 200% in recent weeks. So to understand this issue better, we spoke to Dr. Carmelo Ferlito, the CEO of Center for Market Education on this, CME, to understand a little bit better about what this means to folks like you and me, and of course to retailers when it comes to price hike, especially on items involving consumer goods and services. Listen to Dr. Carmelo Ferlito of CME.
So there is a sort of temporary elements in the inflation of food prices that we are observing, which is due to the various supply chain disruptions that have been created with 2 years of lockdown. Basically, if some supplier scale down or close down for good, it's very difficult and is a lengthy process to go back to the pre-pandemic situation when the demand start to pick up again. So, and then, of course, there are also climate conditions related with the production of vegetables and so on. And this is a temporary component of inflation that can adjust itself in time. But then there is another component, which is the monetary component. In a nutshell, the inflation that is really concerning now is the one generated by an excess of money supply. So there is the risk of permanent inflationary threats when the money supply grows faster than the output. And this is what happened over the past years when expansive fiscal and monetary policies have injected liquidity in the system beyond the size of growth of the GDP.
Tackling monetary inflation requires government to spend less over time, said Dr. Carmelo. This is to avoid other problems relating to high inflation, such as unemployment.
Not only that prices can further go up, but also that the structure of employment will be affected, and it is indeed affected by money creation. And when inflation will be too high and the money supply will have to be tightened, then we incur in the risk of rising unemployment.
Implementing price ceiling is one measure being explored by experts to contain the sharp rise in food prices. Dr. Carmelo, however, said that its implementation will create less incentive to produce and makes the situation worse.
Price ceilings are not good because the fact that prices are rising up is a signal that something is wrong. And that signal needs to be there so that supply and demand tends to readjust. Okay? If we eliminate that signal, we don't solve the issue, we cover it. And for how long can we keep on covering the issue?
Therefore, how do we address the issue at hand? Dr. Carmelo Ferrito said that in order to curb further rise in food prices, practical measures need to be implemented, starting with restoring the confidence in businesses so they will scale up their supply. It's all about managing the supply. So here is Dr. Carmelo on the issue.
We can have practical measures like introducing special trade corridors to allow foreign products to enter the country and rebalance supply. Second, we must reopen to the hiring of foreign workers because there is a shortage of workers not only in the agriculture industry, but in many crucial sectors in the Malaysian economy. And the most important element is creating confidence. We need supply to scale up again where it was before the pandemic. This is not going to happen if manufacturers, entrepreneurs, suppliers still believe that lockdowns may happen again, so demand may be pushed down again. So more clear signals need to be sent in the direction of creating confidence that the worst is over and we can start normalizing our economy. This, I think, will be really the crucial item be kept into consideration.
Over the next 1 week, over the next 7 days, we're going to see a lot more conversation on how high prices are going to be affecting the consumers as well as the retailers. So we're going to be expecting a lot of posturing as well as instructions coming in from the government when it comes to controlling the surge of prices, when especially market prices on daily goods. And because of this, we're also going to be expecting to see some challenges coming in from opposition lawmakers to try and see how to make the situation even better. So do keep an eye out in the week ahead when it comes to consumer goods and consumer food prices going up. That's certainly going to be a big deal over the next coming week. We'll go for one more break before we continue on our conversation on the week ahead. Welcome back. So in this week, we're going to be expecting a lot of changes, particularly when it comes to 3G mobile phone users. This is because users of 3G mobile phone or devices have been urged to quickly switch to the 4G network. The MCMC, or the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commissions, said that the 3G network service will cease on December 31st this year. So that leaves you, generally speaking, about 3 or 4 more weeks to move on from 3G to 4G.
MCMC said that consumers who still own SIM cards which only support 3G network have been told to contact their nearest service provider to upgrade to 4G to avoid any inconvenience. It said that the termination of the 3G network is in line with government efforts to improve the quality of broadband coverage under the National Digital Network Jendela initiative. As at September 30th, 94.03% of inhabited areas have 4G access at a speed of 31.34 megabytes per second. Meanwhile, local telco companies such as Celcom, Digi, Maxis, Telekom Malaysia and U Mobile have so far migrated 1.2 million customers to the 4G network.
The government is, of course, trying to enhance or enlarge the conversation on people using 4G under my Jendela program. And of course, in my conversation on Agenda AWANI, I spoke with the folks from DNB, or Digital National Berhad, on the 5G rollout network. They're going to roll out the single wholesale network. If you don't know, we are the only country on the planet that is going to roll out the single wholesale network. According to DNB, we are going to be the pioneers of that. But the detractors are saying that this is not possible to be done. We need to have much more conversations on that. So don't worry about the 5G yet. If you're on 3G, get to 4G, and the government is trying to enlarge the coverage of 4G. So now let's talk about the final story of the day, particularly when it comes to the things that will take place for the next 7 days. The government is planning to make Bangladesh, Indonesia and the Philippines as new source for countries to fill vacancies in the security services sector. This was mentioned by the Home Minister Datuk Sri Hamzah Zainuddin. Because of this, the AWANI Tonight team spoke to Dr. Sukamaran Nair, the Secretary General of the National Association of Private Employee Agencies, on this. Watch the conversation.
We have been waiting for this kind of information from the government because the security industry is in a dire need for foreign guards, especially since this security industry, security guards are classified under the 3D category. You always find Malaysian locals to be participating into this industry. We have about 23 over 1,000 foreign guards, but most of them have returned to their country. And I think we only have about 50% currently residing and working in Malaysia. So there is a big vacuum. So the only concern that I have is, on behalf of the industry, the only concern I have is how quickly this can be done.
This is because, according to him, the security services sector is in dire need of labour.
At the current moment, the security industry players are using only foreign security guards in areas where they are non-governmental. Governmental projects all are being used by local guards. They comply with the rules of using local guards. So when the foreign guards of entry into Malaysia is being disturbed, or if we don't have a smooth flow, we will find that condominiums, projects, building projects, construction sites, plantation sectors, agriculture areas will lack security guards. And when this happens, you will find that there can be a lot of mishaps, a lot of there will be an increase in crime. And thirdly, industries, condominiums, value proposition of properties will also be very drastically affected.
And while we await more discussions on the labour shortage as well as the security services sector shortage coming in from the government, that's all that we have for you tonight on The Week Ahead. Do get the latest updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and the Astro Awani application. My name is Ibrahim Sani. Thanks very much. Have a good week ahead.